Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I will be talking about COREQ. COREQ is a checklist which is generally used for reporting methods of qualitative research using semi-structured interviews or focus group discussions. What is the full form of COREQ? Consolidated Criteria for Reporting Qualitative Research. This COREQ checklist was published by Toll and colleagues in 2007. It's not the only checklist which is used by qualitative researchers. You can alternatively also use something called the SRQR, that is the standard for reporting qualitative research. If you are interested in knowing about SRQR, you can post your comment in the comment box and I will definitely prepare a video for all of you interested in SRQR. But for today we will be focusing on COREQ, which is a 32-item checklist. You must be wondering, why actually do you need a COREQ checklist? What is the need for it? So first point which I would like to let you know is why COREQ is important. Actually, it will make your method section transparent. It will enhance your rigor. So that was the aim why COREQ was prepared. If you go into that paper about the Tonks and colleagues published work, you will understand the reason, the rationale behind preparing the checklist. Because for other even you have the strobe checklist, consort checklist, if you remember, if you know about all of them, other research designs. Now, even journals recommend the use of any checklist for reporting qualitative research. So for example, I just have taken something from the journal guidelines of the International Journal of Behavioral Nutrition and Physical Activity, if you look at it. So there we have their submission criteria. And if you look here, for observational studies, they recommend strobe, right? You have to attach strobe. Now, if you look at the qualitative studies, ISBN-PAR requires the submission of either a COREQ checklist or SRQR checklist. Authors should determine whether COREQ or SRQR is most appropriate for transparent reporting of the study and employ just one of them. So if you don't use COREQ and if you don't attach it as a supplementary file, I'm telling you, your paper will not even cross the editorial step. So it will just get rejected beforehand. And I'm sure when you're submitting, they will ask for the supplementary. And let's say you did not upload either the COREQ or SRQR, the journal would come back to you. They will ask for this checklist, that you first submit that, and then only it will go for editorial review. And of course, if the editor approves it, then it goes to the peer review. So very important, which you must note, that now it is a kind of a mandatory requirement for top journals like Q1 or Q2 journals, where they require a checklist to be submitted while submitting a qualitative research paper. Or it could be any other paper where you're submitting and you have to upload the a relevant checklist. For observational studies, as it's clearly mentioned, you have to attach the strobe checklist. So now I hope you are clear that why COREQ or SRQR is important. And what the reason why I'm presenting this video is I have used COREQ to write my method section for my ethics of proposal. I know if I use it, I will never go wrong with my methodology, because it covers nearly all the points necessary for carrying out a qualitative research study, using either semi-structured interviews or focus group discussions. As I said, it has 32 items. So now the first domain covers 8 items, and that domain is known as research team and reflexivity. Now, what does this research team criteria covers? The first point, if you can look here, it is the interviewer or facilitator. Which authors conducted the interview or focus group? So you need to mention within the manuscript text. It's not after, it's not like under references or bibliography or something. No, not there, not in the acknowledgement section. This will come within the text, within the method section. Which author, which researcher conducted the interview? If I have conducted it, then I'm going to put in my abbreviations NR conducted the interviews or conducted the focus group. So it's important, and I'll show you where I have, how it's written there. Credentials. So what are your authors or researchers' credentials? Very important. It has to be there. Now, credential means whether I have a PhD or I'm an active master's student. So you have to talk about that even. If you're a medical doctor, you write that you have a medical doctor on board also. What's your occupation at the time of the study? Important. So like if you are studying, so you will write, I'm a doctoral scholar. If you've already done it, you're working as senior professor, so you write as senior. If you're retired, then you're a retired professor. You have to mention that. Gender, was the researcher male or female? Even that note. So let's say if there's an entire team of female researchers, so there could be a bias because you're not having any male view, to that particular topic. So the male insight is missing. So it is preferred that, to reduce gender bias, minimize gender bias, you should have, I would say, a combination of both male and female. And similarly, if you only have male authors, then of course, again, there is gender bias. So to reduce that or to minimize the gender bias, there should be a good combination of both male and female researchers. Now, experience and training. Did you already receive any training in qualitative research? In analysis, have you already done interviews? So that also needs to be taken, has to be accounted here. Relationship established. Has any relationship established prior to study commencement? Now, established with whom? It's with the participants, your interviewees, because there could be a bias, right? And one more thing, I just want to tell you why about credentials and occupation. It's important because you could have an interdisciplinary team, and which is important because if everybody is from just one discipline, like only from geography, only from home economics, then perhaps you may not have that, again, there could be a subjective bias or a disciplinary bias. So people from different fields will definitely reduce or mitigate that kind of a bias. Now, participant knowledge of the interviewer. What did the participants know about the researcher? Personal goals, reasons for doing the research. So we also need to report that. You can report it in this domain, maybe in data collection domain also it could be reported. So even what does the interviewee know about this research? Like what information has already been shared with that interview or the respondent or the participant, what we say. And definitely the interviewer characteristics. What characteristics were reported about the interviewer, the facilitator, the person who did the interview. So that gets covered if I'm doing the interviews. I'm a female, I have done this, these are my credentials. I'm currently working as an associate professor. So that needs to be taken care of. Now I'll share you some snippets I have taken out from my different papers here. So there are, snippets from different papers of research team. So let's look at the first one here. What do I write here? Within the context of the present qualitative inquiry, the lead author, that is myself, NR, is a mid-career researcher. So, so I'm talking, what I'm doing right now, occupation from India, with expertise, my credentials, expertise in adolescent nutrition and qualitative research. So I'm already talking about my experience and training here. She conducted all the interviews. So which author conducted the interviews of focus group? Again, very clearly reflected here. And I also mentioned and did not share any prior relationship with the study respondents. So there was no prior relationship established. So definitely no bias of any sort. Other two members of the research team included a female public health nutritionist, that's MB from the United States, and a male food psychologist. So we have two females on board and one male. AW from Australia. So again, different regions also. Both MB and AW being senior scientists. So I talk about, what they are, their occupation credentials. Supervised data analysis. So their role, what is their role, and report writing. This involvement of authors from varied academic, that is various different academic disciplines, backgrounds, minimized the possibility of any personal or disciplinary biases during thematic analysis of the interview transcripts. So this is one. You have to make sure, because what happens in quantitative, you put in your data and the SPSS give you the findings. But here, you only have to take out the data, the meaning. So there is a possibility that, I would say that, chances could be that there is a lot of subjectivity bias there, that you are thinking just from home science field or from geography field or maybe from public health, which could be very different viewpoints. So therefore, interdisciplinary would help in harnessing reflexivity and improve, I would say, your authenticity of findings and reduce any kind of disciplinary bias. And similarly for gender bias, also reduction, we need both male and female authors. Now, again, let's read another one here. I'll read the top one from here. The research team comprised one male and two female researchers. AW, so two female. AW is an experienced professor of behavioral nutrition, skilled in policy analysis, qualitative and quantitative methods, and surveying. NR is an experienced qualitative early career researcher. So that time when I was writing it, I was an early career researcher with a doctoral degree in health sciences, while SK is a senior professor of community medicine with substantial experience in adolescent health. So this paper was on adolescent actually. The two female researchers, very important, why I'm telling you a note here is the two female researchers had no children, while AW is an active grandparent of young children. This study was on Indian fathers' role in childcare and feeding. So the reviewers had actually asked me, I think in my first stage of review, second, that why did you select this topic? Like, is there any interest you want to study fathers? I said, because, my reasons were very different. There were no personal reasons. So that's why we had to make a declaration that me and the other female researcher were not married and we never had children there. So we were not parents, right? So it was important because they thought there could be a bias because of that, because maybe, mothers would like to study the role of fathers, how they bring up children. But yes, in our case, it was not. Neither AW was a parent, he was just a grandparent, and me and the other female researcher were not even parents. Considering the different academic backgrounds, again, the disciplinary backgrounds and parental status of the three authors, the possibility of personal or professional biases were low, right? So very important. There should be limited personal, professional, disciplinary, and gender bias, right? I'll just read another one. Following the principles established in the consolidated criteria for reporting qualitative research, COREQ checklist, see supplementary file. See, so I have already mentioned this in the method section under research team, as well as research design, that yes, a supplementary file has been attached. The present study was conducted between 2023 and June 2024. And again, we talk about the multidisciplinary research team comprised of mid-career female researcher, about myself. So this is about research team and reflexivity. You have to share the credentials, any training received. Everything has to be very clear. Is there any relationship established with the authors? You have to talk about that. Okay. Now we'll go to domain 2. Now domain 2 is actually divided into kind of 3 sections. The first section is about study design. Then we have something called setting, I would say. And perhaps under study design, we have this theoretical framework, participant selection, setting, and then you have the data collection. So I'm sorry, it is actually we have around 4 domains. One is theoretical framework, participant selection, setting, as well as data collection. We'll first talk about the first one, that is theoretical framework. Okay, very important for any qualitative research paper, irrespective whether you are using interviews or it is focus group. Even if you're using, I would say, observation, there also you need to be very clear about your theoretical framework which you're adopting. So here, the present study adopted, again, one example from one of my research papers, adopted a qualitative research design informed by a social constructionist perspective. This perspective allows the researchers to understand how individuals interact with the society through sharing their lived experiences. Using the social constructionist lens, the study investigators examined adolescents' responses to gain insights on the usage of food labels and packaged foods. So again, if you can see, we talk about 3 of the authors are women and 2 are medical doctors. We talk about it. And again, we talk about, this inquiry has been reported in accordance with COREQ. Again, another example for you to share, the present study adopted a qualitative research design which was informed by social constructivism framework. The framework considers how experience is socially and culturally constructed. So very important to upfront state which theoretical framework you have adopted to inform this qualitative research inquiry. Moving on. to the next section, which is about, I'll be talking about both study setting and participant selection. If you can look here, now under participant selection, we have sampling, that is how were participants selected, purposive, convenience, then we have the consecutive, snowballing. Important, in qualitative research, we can use deliberate sampling techniques, that is the non-probability sampling techniques, convenience, snowballing, purposive. That's allowed because the aim of qualitative research is not to generalize, it is to generate in-depth information about the topic under investigation. So no need to worry, you can please go ahead and use non-probability sampling techniques like convenience, purposive, and snowballing. Example. Method of approach, how were participants approached? Approach face-to-face, telephone, mail, email. Sample size, how many participants were in the study? Here, you can also mention in the method section, and you can similarly mention the same in the results section, because you have to tell the number, how many participated in the focus group and how many in the interviews. Then we have non-participant. How many participants refuse to participate or drop out? And if there is a reason for that, do mention that. Setting of data collection. Where was the data collected? Was it collected at home, clinic, workplace, or in a place like a restaurant, cafe? You need to make sense. And if you're doing it virtual, definitely it's not a problem. You can just say that your interviews were conducted over phone, over Zoom platform, Google Meet, whatever it is. Presence of non-participants. Was anyone else present beside the participants and researchers? Very important. So there could be one researcher, like one interviewer and one note keeper, and the participant. If anybody else is present, then it could result in bias, because he or she may not be comfortable in answering. So generally we select a place where nobody is present, known to the participant. Right? Then we have something called the description of the sample. What are the important characteristics of the sample? You can either report it here in bits, and then definitely have to report in results like socio-demographic, how many were male, female, their age, educational background, income, depending, what's your research objective and what you have already collected data on. So let's read about here. So there's one example I've taken through. So primary household dietary gatekeepers form the study sample. The views of these gatekeepers are crucial in this study because they are recognized as the main agents of food availability and accessibility in the home food environment. So we are talking about who is our sample. It is the primary household dietary gatekeepers. And why are their views critical? Like, why am I interviewing them? You need to specify that. So we have given the reason for that. The sample was purposely selected from Kolkata. So sampling, how were the participants selected? So we have used purposive sampling. India, with the aim of including participants with varied experiences and responsibilities to obtain rich and diverse data about home cooking. Now we talk about the setting of data collection, kind of the city, and then of course we'll tell you where particularly the data was collected. Kolkata is a metropolitan city in eastern India and is home to people from different states of India. Thus the sample was likely to reflect the urban Indian population. The gatekeepers were invited to participate in this inquiry through advertisements posted. So this talks about, method of approach. How did you approach, kind of? On various social networking sites. So we are approaching Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Gatekeepers interested in participating in the study expressed their interest to the senior author via email or WhatsApp application. Following this, the interviewer contacted the interested participants of the phone and shared her academic and professional background with them. So I just shared my academic and professional. Subsequently, a plain language statement and consent form was sent to all the potential participants. Upon receiving written consent, the gatekeepers, they were asked to indicate their preferred form of interview, whether they want to do face-to-face, telephonic, the time, date, and place for the conversation. Because if it's face-to-face, you have to decide a place. And generally, it's on a place on a mutual agreement or the preference of your participant. Your preference generally takes a backseat there. Now, so this talks about, I would say, the study setting and sample recruitment under the domain of study design of COREQ checklist. Moving on to the other domain, which is, I would say, it's the same domain. We're talking about study design, but another section of that is regarding data collection. Important. Now, what are the points under data collection? So we have from 17 we have to 23, that is around 7 items. Interview guide, work questions, prompts, guides provided by the author. Was it bias tested? If you could just see here, I have inserted an interview guide. You can insert within the text, or you can attach your interview guide, the FGT guide, as a supplementary file. Both are okay. Okay, it depends on your word limit. But generally, in some journals do not count the word limit of tables, so you are good. You can put it in the manuscript itself. Generally, you should also know that qualitative research papers are more lengthy as compared to a quantitative research paper. So qualitative research papers, may go into around word limits of 8,000 and 9,000, as compared to a quantitative, which can be restricted to 4,000 or 5,000. So there is generally an allowance given for that. But in case you don't have space, you can definitely, I would say, shift your interview guide from the text, main manuscript text, to the supplementary file. Repeat interviews. When you repeat interviews carried out, if yes, how many? Now, then is audio and visual recording. Did the researcher use audio or visual recording to collect the data? Duration. What was the duration of the interviews or focus group? A data saturation. So you have to talk about, duration, even like the time limit. Saturation. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but I'll still repeat for you what is saturation. In qualitative research, we don't calculate sample size beforehand. Like in quantitative, you have the, there's a formula to calculate, right? You have the type 1 error, and, there's a, you have to do that. The sample n and all that. Here, we don't have any formula, and we cannot pre-decide. I would say you cannot beforehand or prior, you cannot decide what's your sample size. You can only decide as your interviews start progressing, right? Now, how is that possible? So there's a point, something called saturation, theoretical saturation, data saturation. Some people also use the term information bar. This is a point when no new themes, ideas, or concepts emerge from the interviews. And that's the time you decide that you're going to stop taking any more interviews. You'll stop recruiting participants. Saturation can come at a point of even 8 participants, and it can also go to 50, 60. If the sample is homogeneous, like you're only doing, let's say, lower income, the possibilities that your saturation may come, at a very, lesser number of interviews, somewhere maybe around 15 to 20. But let's say if you have a very heterogeneous sample, including both, different socioeconomic classes like lower income, middle income, as well as higher income. At that time, the saturation may go up to 50 to 55 or 60 interviews. And of course, if you're both male and females, again, if it's just mothers, you're just working on mothers, the saturation may come around 25, 30, 33. But if it's both mothers and fathers, it may take, because different genders, different viewpoints, it may go up to 40, 50. Right. So you even have to talk about that. And then we have, one second, yes, transcript return. Word transcript returned to participants for comment or correction. I prefer this point, number 23, to generally go into the data analysis section. We'll discuss that in the next slide. We talk about something called as respondent validation or member checking. That's the term. So let's look here at this 2.4 data collection. At the onset, the interviewer sought permission for audio recording and informed the interviewers that all the recorded data would be treated anonymously. So important here, audio visual recording. So we clearly mentioned we're doing audio recording, right? They were further notified that their participation voluntary and they were free to leave the inquiry at any time prior to thematic coding without any penalty. Interviews were carried out until saturation. We cover the data saturation point. Saturation was achieved at the 34th interview. 24 interviews were carried out face-to-face. Now, we are now talking about how many interviews were carried, okay? So you can look here, were carried face-to-face, either in gatekeeper's home or workplace, while the remaining 10 interviews were conducted via telephone. The interviews were conducted in different languages, Hindi, English, Bengali, by the senior author. And I clearly mentioned I'm fluent in all 3 languages so the duration between September 23 and April 24 in the presence of a note keeper. So we also had a note keeper. So you have to mention even that. Except for one interview, all the interviews were audio recorded. However, the one gatekeepers denied permission for audio recording and subsequently only notes were taken during the interview. So that could also happen. This is one of the scenario. If somebody says, I don't want to be recorded, then you have to take down notes. You can request that interviewee just to speak at a lower pace so that you can copy quickly. Because otherwise, if he or she is speaking at a very fast pace, jotting down everything could be quite challenging. None of the interviewees dropped out from the study. So we clearly mentioned there were no dropouts, right? Here it's written how many people refused or participate or dropped out. So none refused, and therefore there's no need for any reason. Upon completion of the interviews, each participant received a culturally appropriate and practical stainless steel ladle worth, INR 60 rupees, a key utensil in local culinary practices as compensation for their time. So if you're giving someone something, giving your participants a reward, please mention it very clearly under the data collection section. Now, we didn't talk about the pilot interview. Let's see if we have that. Based on the research aim and review of previous studies, an interview guide. So how was your interview guide prepared? You need to mention. Were they original questions? Were they derived from the literature? If you're deriving, please mention the references. An interview guide comprising a series of open-ended questions was designed, so this is table 1, and pre-tested with 5 fathers. See here it's written, was it pilot tested? So I mentioned that. No modifications were made in the interview guide as the 5 respondents were able to answer all the questions. Got it? So is this clear? So this was our second domain. Last section was on data collection. Now we'll move to the third domain, which is definitely on data analysis. Now, third domain. So on the third domain, again, 2 sections, data analysis, reporting. Now, what does data analysis cover? Let's look at that. Number of data coders. So how many data coders coded the data? Is it only one person who did the analysis? Then what is the problem? The challenge is that there could be, I would say, subjective bias, personal bias. So if there are 2 or 3, then you can easily enhance your reflexivity, harnessing your reflexivity, and of course, minimize any disciplinary personal biases. Description of the coding tree. Did authors provide a description of the coding tree? Was a coding tree provided? If yes, mention that. Derivation of themes. Were themes identified in advance? So a priori, what we say, A-P-R-I-O-R-I, a priori. Did you do that? Or was it something to do with like, you derive the themes all from your raw data? So that is inductive, and the earlier one was deductive. So which kind of analysis you did? We need to mention that. Deductive coding or inductive coding. Or you did a combination of both. Like template analysis uses both deductive as well as inductive coding. Software. Did you use any software? Which software, if applicable, was used to manage the data? Did you use NVivo? Did you use Atlas T? I personally use NVivo, so I can talk about that later on if you want to know about it. Then we have something called the participant checking. That is, did participants provide feedback on the findings? So this is a bit different. This is different from member checking. That is, you give the transcripts to the respondents and you ask them that, okay, we have transcribed what you said. Do you agree with this transcription? But here the case is you share your findings with them. Okay. I generally share at the last stage, in the sense like once my paper is published, then only I share my paper with my interviewees. Now, under reporting, quotations presented. Were participant quotations presented to illustrate the themes finding? Who was each quotation identified? Like who said that? We'll discuss that also. 30, it's data and findings consistent. Was this consistent with data presented and the findings? Coherence. There should be coherence, and it's for all research papers. It's just not for qualitative research paper, using a COREQ checklist. It's for any kind of research paper. There has to be consistency. Any paper talks about coherence between the findings. Clarity of major themes. We generally say, major primary themes, or just themes and sub-themes, and clarity of minor themes, whether it's there or not. So we'll go ahead and discuss. But now first we'll talk about how a data analysis is written, keeping in mind the points covered from 24 to 28 under the checklist. The note keeper was fluent in all 3 languages. She transcribed the interview recordings verbatim, and the lead author carefully reviewed all the transcript. to enhance the rigor of this inquiry. Member checking, it is also known as respondent validation, is performed whereby all the interviews were invited to provide feedback of the transcripts. Only 4 interviews reviewed the transcript. They confirmed that the transcripts resonated with their experiences and perceptions. Transcribed data was translated to English when necessary and transferred to NVivo 12 software program. So we cover the point on software. We are covering, the software point is covered, and we also covered, the point on member checking, whether the transcripts were returned to the participants, which we had covered in the second domain, right? The study design domain and data collection. For coding, inductive, so what type of coding? So were themes identified in advance or derived from data? Inductive means derived from the data. So we did that. Inductive thematic analysis was implemented in 6 phases. So we talk about this 6 phases here. I could not, perhaps, I don't know, you will not be able to see here, but 2 researchers just simultaneously coded the data and compared the results to mitigate reflexivity and improve rigor and credibility of the research. Is that clear? And in case there was any discrepancy, the 3rd author was contacted, right? So any biases to be reduced, we had 2 coders. So we also mentioned how many coders. It were 2 coders, and a 3rd coder was consulted in case of any discrepancy between the first 2 coders, that is myself and the note keeper, when we were doing the themes. Now, here clearly you can see 7 major themes along with sub-themes. I do not mention minor themes, but it's the same, were identified from the dietary gatekeepers reports of home cooking and its associate factors. So these are the themes, and your sub-themes are here in bracket. Like for barriers to home cooking is a major theme, and the sub-themes include paid employment, outside the home, health issues associated with aging, limited culinary skills. Now, this could also be looked as a coding tree. So you can see here themes, sub-themes. So these are the, like I would say, are broad themes. Under that we have these. Influences, taste, nutritional knowledge, family food environment. Yeah, sorry, here, there. So there were no sub-themes here. In the family food environment, we had the further, classification availability of both healthy and unhealthy food in homes. So this could be one of, you can present your themes and sub-themes in this particular way also, as a, coding tree, as a figure. Whereas there are other 2 ways also, which I want to show you. Themes associated with father's parenting practices. Here you have the table. Themes, sub-themes, and codes. So if you remember in the reporting section of domain 3 of analysis, you'll see whether the codes were given, illustrative codes. And here you can see I have given the codes. And here the codes are given. FC means the father of father 29, father 11, and you have sub-themes, themes. If you don't want to do it in a table, you can do it in a paragraph. Depends, some, as I told you, some manuscripts don't count the word count in table. Since qualitative research has, it's more in numbers because, more words there in this category. Therefore, many people prefer to present in tables so that they can reduce on the word limit. Or you can write in paragraphs, but some journals are there like Appetite, which I generally publish in a BMC Public Health. There is no word limit. So I can easily, write my results in a paragraph form. So I have written this particular theme, and then I have the 2 quotations supporting them. If you can see here, 2 quotations are there with different identifiers. C is child 21. G means he or she is attending government school. So I've mentioned, clearly, what these labels mean. M is male and the child is 10 years. Here this T is a teacher 11. She's from government school. She's a female and she's 42 years. So you need to give these identifiers as mentioned in the COREQ checklist. So this is all about the checklist, what it is. Now you will be wondering that how do I attach it as a supplementary file? So this is the last slide which I want to talk about. You could see clearly reported on page number, right? So this is domain 1, domain 2, domain 3. If you're not attaching anything or if it's not available, you can just write no or not applicable. It's perfectly okay. 3 or 4 points could be no, not applicable. There's no problem. But yes, the entire sheet should not be having, should not have NA or no. You have to report the page number. And it's written here, once you have completed this checklist, please paste a copy and upload it as a part of your submission. Do not include this checklist part of the main manuscript document. It must be uploaded as a separate file. As I told you, for different journals, different requirements, but definitely it goes as a supplementary file. It will never be part of the main manuscript. But you need to report on which page number have you mentioned this. And this will help even your reviewer to quickly go through your methods, and then definitely he or she will move on to the results. And as you all know, methods is the backbone of any research paper. If you've written your methods clearly, explicitly, the probability of getting that paper approved, accepted, is quite high as compared to a paper where method section is not clumsy, not written properly, not written in step by step. Then I think the chances of rejections are very high for those kind of papers. So definitely, I think COREQ should be used for reporting a qualitative research study using interviews or focus group discussions. Definitely, we can use SRQR also. That is a good alternative. So if you guys are interested, I will be more than happy to share that. If there are any questions from today's presentation, please post it in the comments bar, or you can directly email me. I'm more than happy to give you a one-to-one session on COREQ or any other thing related to qualitative research. I hope you liked today's session, and you can please tell me what you would like to learn new, something new which you want me to share with you. I'll be more than happy to prepare videos on that. Till then, bye, take care.